12 cowboys lay in hospital beds, victims of tornado's wrath. "Nobody's crazy enough to ride that beast now," laughed the veteran. A broke young cowboy with no insurance stepped forward. What happened in those 8 seconds shocked the entire rodeo world forever. Subscribe and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Have you ever taken a risk when everything was against you? Let's dive into this legendary showdown. The arena lights cast long shadows across the dusty ground as cowboys gathered around the chutes, their voices hushed in reverent fear. Tornado stood in chute number 7, a massive black bull whose reputation preceded him like a storm cloud. His eyes held an intelligence that unnerved even the most seasoned riders. This wasn't just an animal. This was a competitor who seemed to understand exactly how to dismantle a cowboy's confidence piece by piece. "That's 12 boys in 2 weeks," muttered Jake Stevens, a grizzled veteran whose own encounter with Tornado had left him with a permanent limp. Emergency room starting to look like a cowboy convention. He spat into the dirt, adjusting his worn leather gloves. "Doc Morrison says 3 of them might never ride again." The younger cowboys shifted uncomfortably, stealing glances at the beast that had become the talk of every rodeo from Texas to Montana. Tornado wasn't just winning. He was destroying dreams with methodical precision. 8 seconds had never seemed so impossible, so utterly beyond human reach. "Maybe it's time we admitted this bull can't be ridden," suggested Tommy Walsh, a promising rider who'd been eyeing his first championship. "Ain't no shame in walking away from certain disaster." That's when the laughter started. Deep, mocking chuckles from the veterans who'd seen too many young cowboys lose their nerve when the stakes got real. "Listen to this generation," Jake sneered, his voice carrying across the preparation area. "Back in our day, we didn't have fancy safety equipment, guaranteed insurance, or medical teams on standby. We had grit, and we had pride." The words hung in the air like a challenge thrown down in the middle of Main Street. Several young riders clenched their fists, but none stepped forward. The financial reality was brutal. Without proper insurance, one bad ride could mean bankruptcy, medical bills that would haunt a family for years. It was the kind of risk that separated the dreamers from the desperate. Lane had been sitting quietly on a hay bale, methodically wrapping his ribs with athletic tape. The bruises from his last ride with Devil's Canyon were still purple and tender, a reminder that his body was already operating on borrowed time. His bank account had exactly $43, and his insurance policy had lapsed 2 months ago when he'd chosen between coverage and entry fees. But as Jake's laughter echoed through the arena, something shifted in the young cowboy's chest. It wasn't anger. It was something deeper, something that connected him to every cowboy who'd ever climbed onto the back of an impossible dream. The veterans weren't just mocking the younger generation. They were questioning everything he'd worked for, everything he believed about what it meant to be a true competitor. Slowly, Lane stood up, his boots hitting the ground with quiet determination. The conversation around him continued, but he was no longer listening. His eyes were fixed on chute 7, where Tornado waited like a living mountain of muscle and malice. The bull seemed to sense his attention, turning those intelligent eyes toward him with what almost looked like recognition. "Sometimes," Lane said quietly, his voice cutting through the chatter like a blade, "the biggest risk is not taking one at all." He walked toward the chute, each step echoing with the weight of a decision that would define not just his career, but his very identity as a cowboy. The arena fell silent as Lane approached Tornado's chute, his presence shifting the entire atmosphere from casual conversation to electric tension. Even the bull seemed to straighten, recognizing that something significant was about to unfold. The other cowboys stopped their preparations, forming an unconscious circle around the young rider who just volunteered for what many considered suicide. "Son, you sure about this?" asked Red Thompson, the chute boss who'd seen more broken bones than a battlefield medic. His weathered hands gestured toward the clipboard listing Tornado's victims. "This ain't about proving yourself to anybody. That bull's got a 97% buck-off rate, and that 3% didn't exactly walk away whistling." Lane nodded, his jaw set with quiet determination. "I've studied every ride, every video, every story about this bull. The riders who got hurt, they all made the same mistake. They tried to fight him instead of dancing with him. He ran his hand along the chute rail, feeling the vibrations as Tornado shifted his massive weight. A bull this smart doesn't just use strength, he uses psychology. Jake Stevens pushed through the crowd, his face flushed with disbelief and something that might have been concern. Boy, you don't even have insurance. One wrong move and you'll be paying hospital bills for the rest of your natural life. Your family will be in debt until your grandchildren are grown. Some things are worth more than money, Lane replied, beginning his pre-ride ritual. He pulled on his protective vest, checked his rope, and tested his glove grip with methodical precision. Each movement was deliberate, purposeful, the actions of a man who'd made peace with his decision. The crowd in the stands had caught wind of what was happening. Word spread like wildfire. The young cowboy with no safety net was about to take on the bull that had hospitalized a dozen riders. Spectators leaned forward in their seats. Phones emerged to capture what might be either triumph or tragedy. "Lane," called out Maria Santos, the arena's head medical coordinator, "I need you to understand what you're risking here. Tornado doesn't just buck. He targets specific body parts. Ribs, shoulders, that left knee that's already giving you trouble. He's calculated, almost surgical in how he hurts people." Lane looked at her with eyes that seemed older than his years. "Maria, I've been broke, beaten up, and counted out more times than I can remember, but I've never been afraid, and I'm not starting now." He gestured toward the stands where fans were now standing, anticipating something extraordinary. "These people didn't come here to watch us play it safe. They came to see if we've got what it takes when everything's on the line." As Lane climbed the chute rails, Tornado's behavior changed. The bull stopped his restless movement, becoming unnaturally still, as if he too understood that this moment was different. The two competitors, man and beast, seemed to study each other with mutual respect and recognition. "Timer ready?" Lane called out, settling onto Tornado's broad back. The bull's muscles tensed beneath him like coiled steel springs, power beyond imagination waiting to explode into motion. Lane wrapped his rope around his hand, feeling the familiar burn of rosin and leather. 8 seconds, he whispered to himself, then louder to Tornado, "Let's see what you've got, partner." The arena held its breath. 12 cowboys had tried and failed. Millions of pounds of bull had proven unstoppable. But sometimes in those rare moments when courage meets opportunity, the impossible becomes inevitable. Lane nodded toward the gate operator, knowing that the next 8 seconds would either make him a legend or break him completely. The gate swung open, and history began to write itself. Tornado exploded from the chute like a natural disaster given form, his first leap launching them both 15 feet into the arena's center. But instead of the panicked grabbing and desperate hanging that characterized most rides, Lane moved with fluid grace, reading the bull's intentions like a master chess player anticipating moves 3 steps ahead. The bull spun left with vicious intent, but Lane was already shifting his weight, using Tornado's own momentum to maintain his balance. Where other riders had been thrown off center by the bull's calculated aggression, Lane seemed to anticipate every twist, every feint, every explosive change of direction. "He's not fighting the bull," gasped Tommy Walsh from the rail. "He's dancing with him." Tornado, sensing something different about this rider, escalated his assault. He threw himself into a series of bone-jarring spins that had hospitalized 3 cowboys just the week before. But Lane adjusted his grip, loosened his shoulders, and let his body become water flowing over stone. Each of Tornado's attacks met not resistance, but adaptation. At the 4-second mark, something extraordinary happened. Tornado stopped mid-spin as if reassessing his opponent. The crowd fell silent, witnessing a conversation between man and beast that transcended words. The bull's intelligent eyes seemed to acknowledge that this rider was different, not just another cowboy to be dominated, but a true competitor worthy of respect. "I see you," Lane whispered, his voice barely audible over the arena's tension. "You're not just trying to throw me. You're testing me." Tornado's response was immediate and devastating. He launched into his signature move, a forward flip that had shattered ribs and ended careers. But Lane, instead of bracing against the motion, leaned into it, using the bull's power to propel himself into perfect position for the landing. 6 seconds. 7. The arena erupted as the 8-second buzzer sounded, but neither rider nor bull seemed ready to end their dance. Tornado continued bucking for another full second, not out of malice, but as if acknowledging that this battle had been worth the extra effort. When Lane finally dismounted, he did so with a grace that left the crowd stunned. But the most remarkable moment came next. Instead of charging toward the exit as angry bulls typically did, Tornado turned back toward Lane. For a heartbeat that seemed to last forever, the two competitors faced each other in the center of the arena. The bull's massive head lowered slightly, not in defeat, but in something that looked remarkably like respect. Lane touched the brim of his hat in return, a gesture that sent the crowd into absolute pandemonium. He'd done more than ride the unrideable bull. He'd earned the animal's acknowledgement as a worthy opponent. As Lane walked toward the chutes, his legs unsteady from adrenaline rather than injury, Jake Stevens was the first to reach him. The veteran's face showed a mixture of awe and humility that hadn't been there an hour earlier. "Son," Jake said, extending his hand, "I owe you an apology. That wasn't just courage, that was artistry." The score flashed on the arena board, 94 points, the highest mark in the arena's history. But for Lane, the numbers seemed secondary to something more important. He'd proven that taking calculated risks, even without a safety net, could lead to extraordinary results. "Sometimes," Lane told the gathering crowd of cowboys, his voice carrying the wisdom of someone who'd just touched greatness, "the only real security comes from being willing to risk everything for what you believe in." As medical teams checked him over and found nothing more than minor bruises, Lane realized that the greatest victory wasn't surviving Tornado's assault. It was discovering that courage, skill, and respect could transform even the most dangerous situation into something beautiful. The legend of Lane Frost had grown by another chapter, written in 8 seconds of perfect partnership between a fearless cowboy and an unstoppable bull who'd finally met his match.